Welcome back to Respoiled. Today, I have another captivating story to share with you. But before we dive in, if you're new here, I invite you to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications, so you'll never miss out on all of my latest uploads. Now let's get started. A priest at the Vatican Observatory makes a startling discovery: a comet is hurtling towards Earth. Hastening to validate his findings, he consults numerous texts before alerting his superior, who convenes a council to address the matter. It is revealed that biblical prophecy outlines the signs heralding doomsday, with disasters unfolding each time an angel sounds their trumpet. 5 of the 7 angels have already sounded, resulting in events such as wars, tsunamis, and 9/11. The approaching comet, being the 6th event, signifies evil and portends the liberation of the Antichrist upon impact. Diplomat Robert rushes to Rome's Catholic hospital as his wife Kate prepares to give birth. Sadly, Father Spoleto delivers devastating news. Kate has suffered a miscarriage, rendering her unable to conceive again due to severe womb damage. However, Spoleto offers a solution. Another mother has tragically passed away during childbirth, and since Kate is unaware of her own loss, they could swap babies discreetly. Robert agrees and introduces the newborn to Kate as their own. As years go by, the child, named Damien, thrives, growing into a joyful and robust youngster. Robert continues his duties at the embassy until he receives news of his appointment as the new deputy ambassador to the United Kingdom, signaling an imminent relocation for the family. Meanwhile, the current ambassador encounters traffic congestion en route to a meeting. Suddenly, a worker dislodges a wheel stopper, sending a tank truck careening down the street toward the ambassador's vehicle. The truck collides with the car, spilling gasoline as a bystander inadvertently drops a lit cigarette, igniting a fiery explosion. In the aftermath, Robert is promoted to the position of ambassador and the family relocates to London, where they are assigned a grand, spacious residence. 2 years later, Kate brings Damien to the park but becomes engrossed in her phone call. Despite her efforts, nobody responds on the other end. When she finishes the call, she panics upon realizing Damien is missing, only to find him hiding behind a tree moments later. Anxious, she scolds him for causing her distress. Several days later, a birthday party is organized for Damien's 5th birthday, attracting the attention of journalist Keith. As the nanny assists with the arrangements, she notices a black dog nearby, triggering a sudden shift within her. Without hesitation, she ascends to the roof and declares her action as a sacrifice for Damien before ending her life with a rope. Panic ensues, with Keith capturing the scene through his camera lens as Robert hurries to shield Damien from the distressing sight. Despite the commotion, Damien remains unperturbed and even acknowledges the presence of the dog with a wave. The incident quickly becomes headline news, prompting reporters to tail Robert incessantly, though he steadfastly refuses to offer any commentary. In his attempt to evade the press, Robert accidentally collides with Keith, damaging his camera in the process. However, Robert pledges to replace it. Later, Father Brennan visits Robert and discloses that Damien is the Antichrist, recounting his presence during Damien's birth and revealing the unsettling truth about Damien's lineage, linking him to a jackal. Robert dismisses the man as irrational and instructs security to remove him from the premises. As Brennan departs, Keith spots him and captures more photographs. Back at home, Robert and Kate interview Mrs. Baylock, impressed by her qualifications, and decide to hire her as the new nanny. Upon meeting Damien, Baylock reassures him of her role in protecting him. Meanwhile, Keith scrutinizes the photos he took and notices a peculiar line above Brennan's head, consistent across all images of him. The following day, the family is obligated to attend the previous nanny's funeral, and Kate insists that Baylock accompany Damien. Despite Baylock's assertion that Damien is unwell and shouldn't attend, Kate disregards her concerns and compels Damien to join them in the car. While en route to the church, Damien becomes visibly ill upon seeing the crucifixes adorning nearby buildings. Suddenly, he becomes uncontrollable, unleashing a tantrum and inadvertently injuring his mother in the process. Robert intervenes to restrain Damien and instructs the driver to return home promptly. Back at the house, Robert tends to Kate's wound as she observes that Damien fell ill abruptly, a stark departure from his usual health. Concerned, Kate takes a bath, only to be alarmed when her wrist begins to bleed inexplicably. To her horror, she sees Damien standing before her, wearing a mask and revealing unsettling teeth while brandishing a rope. Kate wakes up, realizing it was a nightmare. Meanwhile, Robert discovers a dog growling menacingly at Damien. Baylock promptly enters and soothes the dog, mentioning she and Damien discovered it wandering in the garden. Damien grew fond of it and decided to keep it. Enraged, Robert asserts his authority over pet decisions and instructs Baylock to remove the dog. The following day, Kate accompanies Damien's class on a zoo outing. Damien opts to observe the monkeys, who appear visibly disturbed by his presence. Kate notices this and attempts to move him away, but Damien remains fixated on them. Suddenly, a gorilla aggressively pounds on the glass, seemingly targeting Damien. Panic ensues as all the animals begin to roar, yet Damien maintains an impassive expression. Upon their return, Kate confides in Robert about her concerns regarding Damien's behavior and decides she needs therapy. That night, while brushing her teeth, Kate is startled by a monstrous reflection in the mirror, yet it's merely another nightmare. Descending the stairs, she discovers Damien preparing a sandwich in the kitchen but receives no response to her inquiries. He simply retreats to his room. Meanwhile, Keith continues scrutinizing the photographs, uncovering additional peculiar light anomalies. Later, during a church event, Robert is approached by Brennan, who warns him of Kate's peril and provides a rendezvous time and place, hinting it will be their final encounter. As Brennan departs, Keith captures more images of him. Soon, Robert meets with Brennan, who urges him to seek out a man named Bugenhagen, the sole individual knowledgeable about defeating the Antichrist. Brennan adamantly asserts that Damien is the devil's progeny and warns that without intervention, he will harm Kate, whom Brennan alleges is pregnant. Supposedly, Spoleto deceived Robert into taking Damien, implying the hospital priests orchestrated this scheme from the outset. Nonetheless, Robert dismisses Brennan's claims as delusions and departs. Subsequently, as the storm intensifies, Brennan hears unsettling sounds and seeks refuge in the nearest church. Encountering a locked gate, he scales it, only to find the church door similarly secured. As he pounds on the door for help, a roof pole suddenly breaks and impales Brennan, killing him instantly. Meanwhile, Robert returns home and is shocked to hear Kate confirm she's pregnant. However, she wants to terminate the pregnancy, fearing another child like Damien. The next day, Robert discovers from the news that Brennan has died. Subsequently, he visits Kate's therapist, who reveals that Kate is hallucinating, including seeing her son as evil and not truly hers. Meanwhile, Baylock exchanges a knowing glance with Damien, who decides to ride his scooter while Kate waters the plants. Damien rides behind her and shoves her off the balcony, but Kate manages to cling to the edge at the last moment. She appeals to Damien for assistance, but the child remains unresponsive, simply observing his mother's fall to the floor. Shortly after, Robert arrives at the hospital and discovers that Kate survived, but tragically lost her baby. Upon checking on her, Kate implores Robert to prevent Damien from harming her. Back at home, Robert finds the dog still present, but before he can eject it, he receives an urgent call from Keith requesting a meeting. Robert heads to Keith's studio and is astonished to find that the photographs Keith captured of Brennan and the nanny contain a premonitory white light indicating their impending deaths. Keith also possesses Brennan's autopsy report, revealing a birthmark on the priest's thigh shaped like the number 666. Subsequently, Keith leads Robert to Brennan's hidden underground lair, where they discover the walls adorned with Bible pages and crucifixes. Keith delved into Brennan's belongings and found an obsession with a comet that collided with Earth 5 years ago on June 6. Curiously, Damien was born precisely at 6 a.m. on that date, rendering his birthday as 666. While photographing the room, Keith inadvertently captured his own image in a mirror, revealing a haunting white light around his neck, sparking fear that his demise may be imminent. Robert consents to investigate Damien's true origins and accompanies Keith to Rome to interrogate the hospital staff present during Damien's birth. To their astonishment, they learn that the hospital was destroyed in a fire shortly after Robert's family departed. However, they manage to locate a surviving nun with visible burns, who provides crucial information leading them to Spoleto. En route to another church, during a lunch break, Keith shares a Bible passage concerning the birth of the Antichrist. Keith interprets it as a symbolic representation of political power, suggesting that the Antichrist, symbolized by Damien, seeks dominion over humanity. He speculates that Robert was deliberately chosen due to his influential position, implying that Damien may have even orchestrated the demise of the previous ambassador. After traversing a lake, they arrive at a rural church to rendezvous with Spoleto, whose facial disfigurement is a result of the fire. Though unable to speak or walk, Spoleto responds to Robert's inquiry about Damien's true mother by inscribing the name of an ancient cemetery north of Rome. Subsequently, Robert and Keith venture to the cemetery, finding its gate locked, necessitating a clandestine entry by scaling the wall. Amidst the graves, they discover 2 plots bearing the names and dates corresponding to a mother and child. They proceed to open the mother's grave first. As Brennan foresaw, they uncover the remains of a jackal skeleton. Subsequently, they open the infant's grave, and Robert is devastated to find a deliberate injury to the baby's skull, indicating foul play. Suddenly, 2 dogs materialize and assault them, leading to a fierce struggle where both men sustain injuries. After a strenuous effort, Robert fends off one dog with a tool and subdues the other with a grave crucifix. Despite their victory, the dogs persist in their aggression, prompting the men to flee by vaulting over a fence. Meanwhile, Balak and Damien attempt to visit Kate at the hospital. Though initially prohibited by the nurse, Balak persuades her to allow them to at least change the flowers. As Balak enters, Damien remains in the corridor, fixating on the guard whose anxiety escalates rapidly. Inside, Balak muffles Kate's cries for help and administers an air bubble into her IV line. Kate succumbs to an air embolism triggered by the attack, prompting Balak to deactivate the machine when the alert sounds. After a brief moment of agony, Kate passes away, and Balak exits with Damien nonchalantly. Later, at the hotel, Robert receives news of Kate's demise. That night, he endures a harrowing nightmare featuring an ominous Damien, a malevolent figure cloaked in red, and a priest callously discarding his deceased infant from a balcony. When Keith checks on him, Robert expresses his acceptance that Damien is malevolent and his desire for retribution for his wife. The pair journeys to Israel in search of Bugenhagen, the sole individual knowledgeable about eliminating the Antichrist. Bugenhagen furnishes them with a specialized set of knives for dispatching Damien and instructs them on the requisite prayer for the ritual. Additionally, he divulges that Balak is a minion of hell and that Damien should bear a 666 birthmark. Robert begins to waver as he recalls bathing Damien previously without observing any such mark. Bugenhagen suggests it might be obscured by hair, but Robert becomes queasy at the notion of slaying his own son and departs. Desperate to evade the photograph omen, Keith seizes the knives to dispatch Damien himself, but as he exits, a sign plunges from a building, fatally striking him. Witnessing this, Robert reluctantly acknowledges the truth and heads home with the knives. Upon his return, Robert retrieves a pair of scissors with a plan forming in his mind. Suddenly, the storm causes a door to slam shut, rousing the dog, which promptly begins pursuing Robert. He sprints as fast as possible until he reaches a hatch, where he lures the dog into falling in, enabling him to lock it up. Subsequently, Robert ascends the stairs and trims the hair of a slumbering Damien, finally unveiling the 666 birthmark. Without warning, Balak launches an attack, prompting a brawl until Robert strikes her against the wall, rendering her unconscious. He then scoops up a screaming Damien, kicking Balak aside as he exits. Upon reaching the car, Balak shatters the windshield and attempts to obstruct the road, but Robert collides with her, propelling forward at reckless speed, attracting the attention of pursuing police officers. Robert locates a church and brings Damien inside, positioning the boy at the altar and preparing to stab him while reciting the appropriate prayer. Just as Damien pleads, "Please Daddy don't," Robert hesitates, allowing the police to enter and fatally shoot him. Later, coinciding with Robert's funeral, the Pope passes away in his chambers. The President of the United States grasps Damien's hand, as the boy smiles ominously. Don't forget to like, subscribe and enable notifications for more content like this. Thank you for watching.